I invite you to sink into this conversation. Allow Meghan's words and spirit to wash over you, to call you into creativity, to release yourself from the pressure of knowing where your creativity will lead you. It's not about the outcome. It's about the play, the presence, the being with your own creative process. Welcome to the Devoted Way podcast, all about magic and miracles from me, Sora Schilling. It's time to hone in on your intuition, become masterful at energy work, and live life based on your design, your unique blueprint encoded with stardust from the ethereal realm and from those that have come before you. You know what to do and how to be, so trust in yourself. This podcast series is part of a 13-day challenge called Stellar Transformational Act of Reverence, otherwise known as STAR, hosted inside of our Devoted Discord. In each episode, I will randomly announce a keyword that you can use to earn points and win amazing prizes during the challenge. Stay tuned until the end of the episode for more information. Meghan Jaliza Jackson is a Filipino Kiwi earth pigment artist, creative director, educator, and holistic facilitator from Auckland, New Zealand. She creates paint slowly, made from soil, forged respectfully and reciprocally. She paints our inner universe in collaboration with our Earth Mother. She sees her art practice as her main conduit of healing. She also holds spaces through sound baths and energy healing. Meghan works with intuitive, creatively inclined, and multi-passionate people who live between worlds and have important soul projects to create and share. She exhibited internationally and runs online courses to help people come home within through creativity. Hello and welcome, Meghan. It's so lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you, Sora, and thank you for having me. And I am really excited to have this conversation with you and to finally meet you face to face via virtual means.
Right? Likewise. I find that, I have been loving you and your work for some time now. And so it's the fact that we get this chance and opportunity. And I don't know why we haven't done it sooner, but that's okay. I'm glad that we're doing it now and hopefully in the future as well.
Yes, I would so love that. And thank you for the very kind words. I've always felt resonance with your expression as well. So it's truly an honor.
Amazing. All right. So we are here to hold space as you bear your soul regarding your stories. And I would love to start with what is your favorite texture?
That's such a good question. I think this varies depending on the season I'm in. But right now, my favorite texture is the texture of the earth itself. So that gritty, matte, that tactile, gritty, like a little bit soft depending on if there's water, that kind of texture. So the texture of the earth.
I love it. And I think that is so in alignment with some of your deepest passions and deepest place of soul work, right? And so let's talk a little bit about that because that's a beautiful segue. Tell us about earth pigments and what brought you to it and why you love it so much.
So earth pigments are pigments that come from the earth that we use as color, that we use as paint. So there's many types of earth pigments. The most abundant one, the most common one, are ochres. So they are clay-based soil that has a lot of iron. So the thing that makes that soil have color and vibrancy is the element of iron. And I really love this because it has such a primal connection to the mother, to, deep inside the earth is iron, cores of iron, the inner core, the outer core, as well as iron's in our blood. And so I feel that this connection to the earth is really primal in us. Now, earth pigments is also the oldest form of pigments that we've used as humans, and it exists across all cultures, across all of our genealogy. One of the first artworks we have seen, in archaeology are cave paintings, and across empires, it's something that we've used. I arrived at earth pigments 2 years ago after a long period of winter in my life. So I was going through really intense healing. It was my second awakening experience. And I was held by incredible teachers during this time. I was exploring some new energy modalities that I now use today as part of my artwork and as part of my healing work, as well as, healing a lot of fragments and trauma. And after that healing period, and right after I graduated from my healing modality, which deals with the light body, I had a channeling experience inviting me to this practice, which will always be sacred to me. And it took me a few months to say yes to it because, at this point, I was already painting professionally for, 10 years. I was already exhibiting, and I was already a painter. I was painting with commercial paints. And when that download came to me in meditation, I was really daunted by that idea. And I'm used to receiving ideas to create already. Prior to that time, the ideas that I always receive always felt light, always felt playful, always felt joyful. And this one felt a little bit serious, and there's a heaviness to it. And it's almost like a Durga sort of energy of like, here I am, this is this energy, this is this idea. And she required responsibility. And I didn't understand what that meant at the time. So I took my time researching, diving deeper, and until I got comfortable, that's when I said yes to the idea. And saying yes for me meant that I took the time to reflect if this is really an idea that I will see through with commitment, with love, with, a sense of service, and to understand that I will be shaped by it. And so that was the journey. So that was 2 years ago, and it's been so incredible, foraging. So the process is foraging, soils that I felt intuitively drawn to, and then processing them in my studio to turn them into paints, and then painting with them. And they all have their different frequencies. They all have their different messages. And I see them as collaborators ultimately to create soul medicine for others. So that's the journey so far with the earth pigments.
Beautiful. And I'm sure that the journey will continue in its own mystical, amazing way. Just a little side note for the listeners. You heard Meghan speak about Durga, and Durga is one of the Hindu goddesses. So just want to preface that as well. So Meghan, can you share what is the earliest experience or memory you have of you creating?
I think this is very early on in my childhood. I have always painted, even though I didn't realize that I'll be an artist. I actually didn't think that I'd be an artist. I was always painting landscapes, and I've always loved nature, but I was also really bookish, and I wanted to be a writer. And I also loved Astronomy. So I wanted to be a scientist when I was younger. I wanted to I wanted to study the stars and be an astronomer. And in a weird way, I think I am doing all of those things now anyway, but not in the way that I visualized as a kid. But yeah, one of my earliest memories of creating is painting with my watercolors and just telling stories as a kid of things that I can't really express through words. I'm also an introvert. So, yeah, those are my earliest memories.
So very early on, you did work with paint. You loved it and you worked with watercolor. And it's something that's been part of your experience for a really long time then, which is so beautiful. I can just imagine you as small Meghan with your paint, drawing, and then continuing on with landscapes. You had shared that you hadn't thought you were going to be an artist, and you shared all of the different areas that you were intrigued about. So I'm going to touch upon that in the second question. But the first is, what shifted in you for you to believe in yourself to go into the career of art? And was there any limitations that you had to overcome to help you find a place where you felt you were thriving in it?
Mm, that's such a good question. And I think it's still a question that I think I'll always be checking back into. Um, the reason I didn't think I'd be an artist is societal conditioning around being successful as an artist and what that means, or um, it's this idea that you cannot thrive as an artist. And also, I at the time when I was young, I didn't see a genre of art that I really felt I can devote myself to at the time. While I painted and have drawn realistic forms and landscapes, at the time I didn't see artworks that I felt called to, that really spoke to me, that really mirrored what was inside me, like having a mix of different interests and being a storyteller as well. And so, being creatively inclined, I went into advertising school because I was, told by, older people that that's the wise thing to do as a creative, so you can make money as a creative. And so I went to advertising school when I was in university. And I've put painting aside for several years, actually. And when I was in the advertising world up until 2008, that's when I felt this sort of emptiness that I couldn't really put my finger on, and a sense of, almost despair as well. Like, I didn't realize how much I needed to express this side of myself until I was deep into burnout in the advertising world. And that's when I started painting again. And at the time, I discovered this art genre called pop surrealism, which is an art genre that started in LA, actually. And it is a type of surrealism that talks about our times, actually. And so it has a beautiful storytelling lens to it that I didn't find in older traditional art, that didn't really resonate with me. So I really resonated with that and went back into getting my paints and started painting again. And a year later, I started getting invited into doing exhibits. So that was like when it started back for me.
Oh, I love that. Now, okay, can we unpack that one moment in time just for those that are listening where they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling burnt out, right? They are feeling possibly stuck, or they're not finding joy. And they understand from a mind's perspective, okay, do something that makes you happy or brings you joy. But the thought of it is different than actually being able to be open and then moving into that space. And so
Mm,
what was the change that happened when you were burning out in your job and you picked up your brush and started painting?
mm.
What caused that?
I think it really was just an inner quiet where I heard my inner being, and not heard from a like, hearing sort of sense, but like a feeling sort of sense of like, I need to paint again. I need to somehow touch paint. I need to, splash color. And I don't really know what's going to be the result of this. But it's more like this impulse to create from that pure place, not from a place of problem solving or, reading a brief and serving a client or serving a business. And I think that's one of the main differences between design and art is that design is still creative and it's beautiful creativity, but it is looking out externally into problems and creating solutions to them. Whereas art is more an introspective journey where you look inwards and you listen, and then you heed the message that is coming out of you. And I want to touch on this not just from a place of burnout, but fast forward into 2020 during our pandemic. Now, at this point, I've been 3 years into being a self employed artist, creative director, and holistic facilitator. And 2020, I'm really grateful to say, was the time when my business thrived, which I didn't expect. And it's because, a lot of the people who were coming into my courses and my coloring books and my services were needing that sense of, I want to come home to this creative part of myself. And I believe everyone is creative. And sometimes when we feel that sort of emptiness and burnout, it's because we are not expressing this creative aspect of ourselves. We are not expressing this flowy, playful, open, expansive parts of ourselves. You don't need to be an artist to be a creative. Like your creativity could be expressing itself through cooking, through dancing, through, making knitted clothes. And I feel like in society, this is something that we are missing largely. That's causing that sense of emptiness, this societal focus on the logical, the linear, the, just pushing forward, not stepping back and receiving. So I feel for those who are burnt out and feeling that sense of loss, it's all I can recommend is taking the time to come back to that place of silence and quiet, even for just a few seconds, to just start hearing what it is that your inner being is telling you to do. And it doesn't need to be like a big, life shattering thing that you're being called to do. It's usually baby steps that lead to, the next thing.
Yeah, there was something that you said when it came to design versus creativity or art. And that part, I truly believe it, which is, yes, I believe everyone is creative. And in let's say our community, there are many who believe that they are creative, right? They do believe that they can tap into that aspect. But the part that gets a little tricky is that our culture prides upon any sort of action having some sort of outcome. that
Mm,
ultimately is there to lead to quote success. I'm doing air quotes, right? And so therefore even creativity and being creative is now being monetized in this way. So you can't just like bake bread. All of a sudden you're like baking bread and you're like, how can I incorporate this into the thing
mm,
that I do, right? Or and
yes.
so therefore it loses that allure of what you said, which is that art and creativity is you put something out there without necessarily knowing the outcome, right? And
Mhm.
so, as an artist, you might have a plan around your artwork, but in the first beginning stages, you have to simply play. You have no idea what this is going to be, what your art is going to look like, what is the flavor or the frequency. And that bit, I believe, is the playing in the liminal space. That is the space, the quietness, the sense of being in that darkness that you get to really be open to the divine's plan.
Absolutely. I think everything you said really nails this. And it's something that I feel touches on the tension that we artists and creators have and grapple with. It's this idea of, being conditioned to believe that for something to be of value, it has to have an outcome that is measurable and tangible and, you know, fits into the mold of what success looks like in society. And I think this is why for a long time, in my younger years, I didn't value this artist side of myself as much as the creative director side of myself. Um, there, there was a period in my life where for 5 years, I worked as an art director and as a copywriter in an agency that only did work for social good and social change projects and organizations. And during this time, I was really, while I felt fulfilled being there because there were tangible changes, tangible things that I could see that my creativity is giving out to the collective. Um, I still felt that niggle that I wasn't really doing what I'm here to do. And to me, the tension is finally embracing that actually being an artist and this creative aspect of us is essential. It's not measurable. It's not measurable from a place of, you know, like measuring, monetization or et cetera, or, the value of climbing some sort of ladder, like, like a professional ladder in the sense. But the value is in our connection to this life force. And I feel that's really priceless, when we're connected and tapped into this life force. We have the clarity, we have the capacity to solve problems, to think creatively, to create solutions, to be more joyful, to be more engaged in our senses, to be more present. And I feel creativity is healing because it is natural in us. It is natural. So yeah, that's what I think.
It is so natural. It is a part of us. So I'm going to go back to that second question that I said that I would go back to because I did remember. So you had shared that growing up, you know, even in your young adulthood, you thought astronomy and writing and art, like all of these areas were things that you felt you had some magic and medicine in and that you loved and you were interested in. And you had no idea that later on, all of those breadcrumbs would lead to the work that you do now. Right. And I
Mhm.
know that you also are interested and know some or much about human design. And so, many of us can have a very introspective experience where you have to go inward to figure things out. And for some, it's an external. So if you're a right angle cross, so you need to more like, a left, yeah, and a right angle, you need to have like more of experiences outside in order to get
Mhm.
to have a better understanding as to what your path is. Right. And
Mhm.
so I wonder for you, when you got to that place of pivoting and being like, I know that I'm having the niggles. This isn't quite the thing for me. There's something else, but you're realizing it doesn't fit in a box. right? It's not one
Mhm.
of those professional career titles that you can go after. So, did you find for yourself that it was an internal process, or did you find that there was someone or people that helped you kind of figure out what that looked like?
I think it's equally both. And mostly like, but for me, the process is going inward first and investigating inwards first, and then magnetizing the people, the opportunities, the signposts outside. So for those who know human design, I'm a manifesting generator. So I'm a sacral manifesting generator, and something that I learned just last year. And but looking back, that process was very much an inward process, and then a response to what I was magnetizing from the outside world. And that included mentors, that included teachers, that included modalities. In terms of having multiple interests and how, that weaves in, you know, I think for people who feel the same way as I do, who are drawn to many um, fields and drawn to many different, interests, for me, it's not something that I consciously integrated until very recently. In the past, it was always just parallel paths that I was exploring. So there was that side of me that was the art director and copywriter, and that was one path. And I was growing and progressing in that path in my day job. And then there was the artist side of me who was on the side exhibiting, on the side participating in community art events and engaging in that community. So there's that one parallel. And then there's the other side of me that was drawn to spirituality and the journey of the soul. And I was, when I had my awakening experience, I was then drawn to yoga and these healing modalities and sound. And I was drawn to them not from a place of thinking this is going to be a career at all. This was something that was just for me. And back then, probably for about 10 years, these three were always just parallel paths. They never crossed. And I didn't really know how to weave them together back then. And I didn't really think that I needed to weave them together back then. Until 4 years ago when I became self-employed. And that's when it all came together. And so what I would share is that a lot of the time when we're walking these baby steps, following what we're interested in, I think it's important to follow these trails from a place of just curiosity and following what lights you up and letting go of how to make it a job. Because usually that growth, the baby steps you're being led to is the growth that you need to then be at a place where just one day you'll look back and go, actually, I know how to integrate them now. Like if it wasn't for my art direction and copywriting career, I wouldn't have the work ethic that I have now that is helping my artist self, and if it wasn't for my spiritual interests, I wouldn't have the healing aspect of my artist self. And so all these parallel paths were needed to be explored independently of each other first. And then somehow, someday, it all comes together.
Yes, I agree. It does come together. You just have to trust it, though, right? Like sometimes it feels like quite a long journey, but absolutely. So, what you said, being curious. Keyword infinite. Infinite. Being open, noticing what lights you up, following the breadcrumbs. These are little tidbits to help support others. One of the things I noticed for myself is there is an internal lighting up, right? It's not necessarily this like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. But there's like
Yes.
an internal like, oh yeah, that happens, followed by, oh gosh, and quite the fear, right? And so like that, like, oh, really? I have to do that thing? That's when I feel like I know I'm on the right path versus when something is just like fireworks and you're a yes. Usually that's me possibly bypassing because I see something shiny and a little too good.
Absolutely. You nailed it. Yes, the lighting up is never this excited feeling. It's never this. It's not this big fireworks accelerating joy. It's not. If you think that's it, it's not it.
It's not it. Exactly.
It's very quiet and it's very like, it feels expansive on the inside. It feels like something is blooming inside you. It feels like expanding inside you. And it's just steady. It's just, yes, this is it. And it's like, it's almost like an energy that doesn't need to prove itself. It's not frenetic. And then, yes, the dread of like, oh God, I have to do this. Why do I have to do this? That's what I got with the earth pigments. Like,
yes.
For, several months, I was like, why do I have to do this? I'm not worthy to do this. This is too hard. I don't want to do this. And there are days when I still have this. But that's when I know that, yes, I'm on the right track, because I also want to share that tension or like that dread of like, oh God, why do I have to do this? Is I've come to find the edge of your growth. And that's why there's tension, because you don't know what's next. You come into the edge of your growth, literally. And so you don't know what's on the other side of that threshold. And your personality side, your ego side is afraid because it's here to protect you. It wants certainty. It wants, it wants to know it's going to survive. And so, yes, I fully agree with that sense of expansiveness. And then like, oh God, why do I have to do this?
Totally. And as that happens, like you said, often for me, it takes a little while. So it's not the thing that I just immediately start doing or start creating. Because though I'm a projector, when I feel this call, I can work and do something and create something really quickly. So it usually is something that lingers in the back of my mind and in the back of my heart and is a common theme that kind of pulsates in me. And I know that it's there, but I'm like learning to slowly allow it to uncover and allowing myself to discover. And then there's a moment, the synchronistic divine to cosmic timing, when all of a sudden I'm like, go. And then I have to go. And so, the fear thing is great because currently I've been feeling this particular project, and everything in me is like, no, I really don't want to do it. I don't actually know how to do it. It's like a completely different arena, and it's an edge for me. And it feels like a lot to accomplish to get this out there in the world. And yet I know deeply that this is something that is for me. It's definitely a gift from the Great Mother to me as inspiration and a source of creation that she desires for me to be a handmaiden to. But yeah, so for all of those out there that are like in fear mode, we get it. Totally, Meghan and I get it.
We get it. We're with you. We're totally with you. I just love what you said about that, because I feel my process is very similar as well when receiving ideas for projects to create. For sure, there is that download. It's like a seed, a seed of light that comes within you, and you kind of reflect whether this is something that you're going to take on, or if you've already said yes to it and you're already taking it on, whether you like that doubt, I feel, is also healthy. I feel it's also a great part of creativity. It's something that I constantly have. Like, I think, one of the biggest projections I receive from people is that I find this easy, to do, creating. Sometimes I would get messages and that I'm not afraid. And that cannot be further from the truth. Creativity is such a vulnerable act. There is always going to be doubt. There's always going to be fear. And that is there to show you where you haven't laid out foundations yet,
Yes.
And I feel that is when I have that feeling of like fear or terror, sometimes terror for a project or an expression, something I want to express. Whenever I feel that doubt, that shaking fear, just know that that's normal. And that's just showing you a gap in knowledge, but not a gap in worthiness. It's a gap in knowledge. And all you need to do is investigate, research, if it lights you up. And slowly you feel that foundation building. And then something that seems so scary at the start, maybe a month in, after some time has passed, you'll notice you've expanded to be able to hold, you suddenly have the capacity for it. And then suddenly it's easy. And that's the cycle. It's a journey.
Absolutely. And for those so investigation is not my thing, right? So I completely agree. The fear is because there's still information that you need to know or acquire. And so for those that have an investigative, love, right? And I know for a profile, you have a 1 in you, so you may really love that part.
Yes.
I don't have that in me. And so the fear builds. And so I just share for those of you that if you're like, oh, that's the part that's the hardest for me to like figure it out, because once you actually find the information, it's totally fine, right? Like all the fear dissipates for that particular thing. And so for those of you that feel that, I get it. And I would just invite you to partner with someone that you love that also sees you as sovereign, who can hold you and be there as you do the research. They're not the ones who have to do it, but just someone who's there who can keep you accountable, but not in regards to ticking off a list, but more so just holds the space and says, okay, I know you're scared, but you're going to do this and it's going to be fine, and give me a call, right? Like that usually helps me get something done, including making a phone call. I'm an introvert too. So making phone calls, I'm like, what? Why does anyone need to call anyone? And so making the call, understanding the info, super helpful. But sometimes for us who don't like investigating, it's a little bit challenging.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, for sure. My husband doesn't have the investigating part. So, yes, absolutely. I think it's important to have, the people who will be able to hold space for us when we're in that fear mode, those people that we trust, who can be the safe containers for us.
Yes.
And say, look, I'm exploring this. I'm terrified.
Yes. Speaking of people in your community and loved ones, who in your family, could be close family, nuclear family, or family meaning not blood related, but someone that you love and adore, who's someone that you trust and who has guided you? And can you share a story about them?
There's so many. I would like to share not a blood family, but one of my best friends. Her name's Audrey, and she is someone who has really been a guiding light for me for a few years now. And the story I want to share is how friendship, was able to, hold me, during our pandemic, and being able to grow together through love and just sharing stories every day. So one of my best friends, Audrey, she recently moved to France before the pandemic. And it's interesting because when she moved away, we actually grew closer. And we have been, like going through the pandemic, they were one of the first who experienced it. So Italy and France. And this was before it reached New Zealand. This was before it reached the US. And so, like, as she was going through the motions of what is this new thing that's happening, this terrifying thing that's happening, I was able to hold space for her, at the time, because I had more capacity, because it wasn't happening here yet. And so, we would be sharing recordings every day on WhatsApp and, just kind of walking through it together, this unknown thing that was happening. And then when it was happening to us, because she's been in on it, like, I think 3-4 weeks before we had our first lockdown, I went through the motions. The motions that she went through, 3-4 weeks before that. And she then had the wisdom, to know what to do. Like, make sure you get hand sanitizer, make sure you wash your groceries. This is what you will expect your government will do, because this is what happened to us. So that was really interesting. So I think, and I love that, how we're able to create these containers for each other as each of us grow and each of us go through our challenges. And I'm just really grateful for technology, that we're able to connect with loved ones from across oceans. I think, in a way, there's a bit of grace that the pandemic happened in this point in time of our history. If you imagine that we didn't have, the internet, social media, like, I think a lot of industries is able to be started or still be kept afloat because of our technology and our connectivity, and relationships and friendships as well, being maintained because of the tools that we have. So I think that's one of the stories that I want to tell. And I'm not sure why I told it, but I think it's just this idea of, like, containers as we grow and as we heal, and being there for each other.
Yes, and honoring Audrey. Audrey?
Yes.
And
yes.
honoring her, and honoring the celebration of friendship, and how distance can actually make hearts grow fonder in a relationship, and how you were both able to create this sacred reciprocity of when one gave and when one received, and knowing that though we are all having somewhat of different lived experiences, there were also this year and last year very similar lived experiences when it came to the pandemic itself. And then, of course, the nuances of the difference too in that. And so really honoring that you had that support system. And for those that are listening, that we get to honor someone in our life that made sure that we didn't feel alone in this. So thank you for that.
I think, yes. And I think I wanted to share about that, because I think she was the one who was able to help me make sense of this massive transformation that we were going through. And I think because she's also an energy sensitive, there's a lot of overlaps in terms of our interests. I feel I was able to grow as a person during this whole transition because of the space that she held. So I just wanted to honor her in that way.
Absolutely. I think there's always space to honor people, right? I don't know how often we do it and how often we do it with the actual person. And so I'm just glad that you were able to honor her and we got to really witness and listen to that. All right. So last thing, we're going to do some bare your soul. So some quick questions, and let's just see what comes up for you. Shall we?
Awesome.
All right. Sounds good. Number 1, what does devoted mean to you?
Devoted to me means deep love, gratitude, focus, and unwavering commitment to serve something greater than myself, even if that means serving my own healing.
Beautiful. What's one thing that others may not know about you?
Hmm. I regularly work with many energy frequencies and our body, which is an energy system behind our chakras.
Excellent. Sounds good. So, because we already know some of your gifts, if you were to share, what is your medicine that you walk with? What is in your medicine basket? What would you say when it comes to how you show up in the world and your gifts?
What's in my medicine basket is my joy in creating harmony and beauty as an offering of healing to others.
Amazing. Um, what is the most current question you are walking with right now? That's part of a lesson that you're really navigating.
The current question I'm walking with right now is how to thrive and continue thriving as a solo artist, entrepreneur, and healer in a way that's reciprocal to the earth and to our threads with each other.
That's a great place of inquiry.
Mm.
Seriously. Yeah. All right. Two more questions. What's the last TV show you binge watched or read incessantly?
Oh, okay.
And no judgment.
No. So I love this K-drama at the moment.
Oh, you do?
It's on Netflix. It's called I think it's called Vincenzo.
Oh, yes. I watched the first episode. I have. Yes,
I love that I've been binge watching that show. Like I just
I'm going to keep going now that you've told me. I'm going to keep going.
I love the dark humor, but also like not that I'm into dark humor, but like there's like, that really light humor, but also like exploring some darker themes as
Absolutely.
well. Yeah. So I find that really interesting. What I've read recently is We Will Not Cancel Us by Adrienne Marie Brown. I just love that book.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Last question. What are you currently working on in your business and where can everyone find you?
So what I'm currently working on is I've just released my first limited edition handmade earth pigment gouache paints.
Wait, you have? I haven't seen that. I'm totally purchasing some. Please save me some before they all sell out.
I will save it for you.
I've been waiting for you to do this, by the way. Like waiting.
Oh, I'm so excited. Like it's something that it took me a long time to feel like ready to like, should I share this? But yes, it's like I just launched it yesterday. In my stories, and I'll officially launch it today in my channel. So so that's something that I am really excited to share with everybody who resonates with my melody. And I just can't wait for you to experience how healing and beautiful these pigments are. And you can find me at meghanjacksonart.com. and at Meghan Jackson Art on socials. So Instagram and Facebook.
It was so lovely to have you with us.
It's so lovely to be here. Thank you, Sora.
Thank you, Meghan.
So much for having me.
Oh, of course. We have to do it again.
Yes, I would love to do it again. You're such a radiant being, and it's such a privilege to be in the same sacred space. Yeah.
Thank you. It is a blessing to serve you. My deepest desire is to bring nourishment to your soul, activate and enliven your inner landscape, and find inspiration through the sacred stories of others so we remember we are collectively woven. If you're currently playing with us in our devoted Discord, remember to submit the keyword and complete the other moves to earn points and win amazing prizes. If you're not playing yet, visit devotedway.com/star, STAR, to sign up. If you would like to listen to more Devoted Way podcast episodes, watch Devoted TV, or read about mysticism, spiritual devotion, magic and intuition, or creating a prosperous new world, I invite you to enter our virtual temple home at devotedway.com. As I continue to serve, may I humbly ask for a sacred exchange. I would so appreciate it if you would write a love note, otherwise known as a review. Share the episode with your friends and community members, and engage with me on Instagram. Stay sacred and discover your path and join the Devoted Way. May magic and miracles occur in your life every day as you co-create a prosperous new world with the Great Mother. Until next time, this is Sora Schilling.